I'll say entitled. Comedians are very beggy until they get exactly what they want. If you feel as though you're allowed to just do things, and then other people feel as though they're not allowed to do them, I think that there's the perception sometimes that those people that feel okay with doing those things,
Yeah.
that they feel entitled. And I think again, it's perception, right? Do I think I have a right to say certain things to certain people? Maybe I do, and maybe other people think that that's not like appropriate, or that by me doing that I appear entitled. Comedians are very beggy until they get exactly what they want, and then they think that the tide has turned. Like now they're holding all the cards.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And what I realize is that no one's holding the cards at any time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've realized that in any like opportunities that I get, be it in stand-up comedy or just job opportunity wise, I never even if it's like you're full time, we've got you, you're part of the family. The amount of times I've heard that you're part of the family. I never ever can feel like entitled to that job. Like I'm like I could just lose this position at any moment. The CEO could just wake up one day and be like, "We don't need that job. Just get rid of it." And it's
Yeah, I'm
happened, you know?
well, and I'm saying though it's also on the other end as well, right? Some people feel like they're entitled to like
Mm.
um
In like an ownership way, you're saying.
no, just that I always find that I think as a society we get this sort of thing confused, right? Like I believe that we all have a right to go to the passport office and to be treated a certain way, for example. That's
Sure.
100% true.
Yeah.
And of course, if you go to a store, there's certain basic things, right? No racism, sexism, etc. Certainly. But then other things, if you're being belligerent or a certain way, you don't have a right to be in the store and to be dealt with. Whereas I think we get confused to think like, hey, I have a right to be here, and you don't. Like, not if you're going to act a certain way
I
in a
see what
way.
you're saying. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
Like you're not
second that
entitled to everything, to do any you can't just go around and do whatever you want, however you want, and everyone should just be accepting of it.
mm.
That's what
Have
I'm
you
saying.
ever felt at any point in your life like a feeling of entitlement towards something?
I mean, I think we all fall into that sort of trap, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and I think it's difficult to know if I've done it. I'm sure I have, right? Because how can you not, in a way, like kind of feel that way? I think that's perceived by other people, of course. I try not to do that, but again, you you I think I think that how can I put it? I think that when it comes to entitlement, if you feel as though you're allowed to just do things, and then other people feel as though they're not allowed to do them, I think that there's the perception sometimes that those people that feel okay with doing those things,
Yeah.
that they feel entitled. And I think again, it's perception, right? Do I think I have a right to say certain things to certain people? Maybe I do, and maybe other people think that that's not like appropriate, or that by me doing that I appear entitled.
Yeah. Do you think social media has like kind of ramped that up a little bit in society? Or is it more so just like easier to expose? Because people like to conflate that with a lot of things, right? They're like, oh, there's been more violent crimes because of social media. And I'm like, I think there's always been violent crimes. It's just now being filmed and it seems like a lot, right? Do you think
Yeah,
there's a parallel though between those two?
I think yeah, I think that now we're more in tune with a lot of things that maybe before were hidden, right? Like with Black
Mm,
Lives Matter, like with a lot of those videos that were taken, all those things were happening. And because they weren't happening to white people, and maybe in the neighborhood in which you live, you're not aware that it happened. So in your mind, that's not happening because, well, of
mm.
course, you,
It's
you
kind of
never
like
see it.
climate change.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas
Yeah,
now you see those videos, and you're like, my God, this is horrific. What? This has been going
yeah,
on? What? Exactly like this? Oh my goodness. This is, of course, this is brutal, Like, I think, yeah, social media certainly has done that. I mean, I think social media has created certain kind of problems or certain kind of behavior, or more so, right? I think people do feel more like, because you feel brave in social media to say things, because I'm sure you've had it where you talk with someone through Messenger, or they make a comment and then you see them in person, And you're like, oh my God, is this the same person? Like, is this like,
Yeah, yeah,
like they seem so aggressive online, but then when you meet them, you're like,
yeah.
they're so nice, you know? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Well, and I think like because our brains aren't really good at taking an individual and like seeing multiple layers to them. It kind of just like in passing picks up whatever a little bit of that person, and then you kind of construct your own idea based off of previous experiences with those type of people.
yeah.
And you kind of make up in your head like, I bet they're a little bit aggressive, and then you move on with your life. And then when you see them, you're expecting that, but they might not be like that at all, you
Well, the
know?
thing is, that's all you know from them. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that in social media is like, you're making a comment about a post or something, and you may have a very strong view on something. So you're being very, uh, in the
Like
eyes of
Kurt.
some people, being very hard about it, right? Or being
Yeah.
kind of very one dimensional. But if you believe in that, and like you're saying, the person is not just that one opinion. There are a whole bunch of opinions or a whole bunch of ideas, and in theory, the only thing that you disagree with them is that literally that one opinion.
Yeah.
Everything else you may agree with them, but you
We need to go back
never.
to that. Like there got
Yeah,
to a certain point, like I bet it was 2016, right? As soon as Trump became president, it became two sides. Like there used to be lots of people where I didn't agree with their views on religion, but I still wanted to be friends with them. I still think they're a good person, you know? Or I didn't think that it could be something as simple as like, I don't think my buddy should date this girl, but I could still be friends with them, you know?
I think
It
though too. I don't think it's also only social media or necessarily just when Trump came. Maybe that precipitated it or
felt like it
accelerated.
split things down the middle almost.
I think though we became aware that words matter, right? And
True. That's a
I
good point.
and ideas matter, and that if somebody has a certain idea. It's like this idea that something horrible is happening and you say nothing because, well, you don't want to get in the middle of whatever. And then you're kind of like, well, I'm not racist, you know? And then, but someone else is being racist, but you don't say anything. You're kind of, we realize now that in a way you're being racist, right? Because you're not discouraging that. And so in a way you allow it to, and I mean, that's all about like what
Yeah.
amount of
I would
social
argue
responsibility
is
do you have?
yeah,
You know?
I would argue it's like your social responsibility to like the person who's saying those things, right? Like if it's somebody who's a dear friend of yours, then you would approach that situation maybe differently. Like you're like, I know that if I embarrass him right now in front of these people by calling him a racist, he's just gonna go harder into this opinion. So maybe it's something you pull them aside and say like,
Yeah.
hey, that wasn't, just
But
that's
I think
not
in the
cool.
past,
Do
the
that in
idea was,
your own home if you want
but
to,
the
but
idea in
not
the past,
out
I think,
here.
was to keep the peace, right? And just like,
Yeah, sure.
well, let's just look the other way. And like you're saying, like, well, it's not the only thing. Like generally they're a good guy, but they just have this kind of one weird belief about whatever, right?
Mhm.
And the thing is that
To
I
be
think,
clear, if it's like a deeply hatred of another race, like I couldn't be friends with that person. Like so, it does come down
well,
to
no, exactly.
you
Of
know,
course, I didn't think you meant like if
like
they
I
allowed
hate black
split, then you
people, you're
hate it.
not allowed over.
Yeah,
My
exactly.
girlfriend's
Well, no, no,
Caribbean.
no. Yeah. I didn't think we were talking about those kind of things. Yes,
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
course.
But yeah, I was saying like, and that's the problem though, is too, is you can extrapolate any simplistic philosophy of anything into like the most extreme portion of it, which is like what I just did there, right? By saying first that, oh, I could be friends with someone who has one opinion I don't agree with. But if that one opinion is extreme, then of course, yeah, that's the anomaly, like end the friendship.
But I think before we were more prone to be like, well, they're okay. They don't like certain people or they make certain comments, but they don't mean
They're my
harm.
uncle, yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is that whether they mean harm or not is kind of like not really the point, right? It feels like the
Sure.
point is more like whether you mean it or not, if you are doing harm, you're still responsible for having done that.
Mm-hmm.
And you should probably stop doing that.
Okay,
And,
let's
and I
bounce
think
off this.
what's that?
I said let's bounce off this before we get canceled.
Sure, go
I
for
feel
it.
like we're getting in the weeds here now. Luke, I want my audience to get to know you like a little bit better too during our conversation. So, like, when was the first time that clicked for you in your life that you're like, I'm want to do stand-up comedy. Like I'm gonna go actually get on a stage and do this.
Oh wow. You probably don't know this part. So I'm from Montreal, and in 1993, I decided I saw an ad, and I went and took a course at the Comedy Works in Montreal,
Okay.
and that was probably the first moment. I think growing up, or not, maybe not so much growing up, but like in those years that I was in university, just the way that I would joke around and the way that I would talk, often people would say that to me. And then at that point, I was finding it difficult to get a job after university, and I decided that I would try that. And I think that when it really clicked is while I was taking that course, the first time I was on stage, I did a competition at McGill University for $50, and I won it. And I think
Wow.
that, yeah, I think that when that happened, I was kind of like, oh, well, maybe, I don't know. It was fun, right? It was fun to get the laughs. It was fun to win, all that kind of stuff. It was a super positive. So that was kind of where I got hooked, you know.
So how old were you think?
How old was I?
Yeah.
You're going to try and figure out how old I am now. People are going to do some math.
Nah, nah, nah.
Yeah.
I'm not good at math,
Lenny,
dude.
we had a podcast recently. That's all Lenny was trying to do, was trying to do the math on like, okay, this year, and he said that
Started in
year.
93.
That's right. That's right. I was how old was I? I was 25.
25. Okay. So like frontal cortex is fully developed. You're like, I'm gonna do stand-up comedy. Was there like because you had to decide to take the course too, right?
Mhm.
So like who were your kind of comedic influences at the time that made you kind of go, or was it just like an internal, I want to do this for
I
myself?
Well, I mean, I think that, kind of growing up, I was always drawn to comedy in general. As a kid, I used to love they had reruns of the Andy Griffith Show. That was a big thing. Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, MASH, a lot of not so much stand-ups, but more sitcoms, I'd say.
Hmm.
Carol Burnett Show, all those were on TV, and those were big influences, right? I watched a lot of comedy on TV. I My mother died when I was young, and my father was a teacher. He taught high school, but also taught at the university at night. I spent a lot of time at home. I have a brother, but he's older and he had a girlfriend. I spent a lot of time alone by myself, watching a lot of sitcoms. So those are probably my
Kind of
influences.
absorbing that.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's funny, like a lot of my childhood was actually watching those shows too because my parents would just always have them on.
Yeah, yeah.
There was like some network on the satellite dish that had like, game shows from the 70s and it was just I'm just watching like Chuck Woolery
Yeah,
in
yeah.
his
Chuck Fuller, my God,
heyday.
he was everywhere in
Yeah,
those
oh yeah, he
those
was
days.
on everything. Yeah, my
Hmm.
mom loves some Chuck Woolery. But now you're, fast forward to 2023, now you're putting together a festival in the Danforth.
Yeah,
So, like, how did that come together for you? I know you've been producing shows for a while back. You had me on one of your shows before,
yeah.
Comedy Nuggets. So when did you start planning for like a comedy festival and like what's that undertaking been like?
Well, I started really having the idea only in February of this year.
Oh wow.
And I think that as soon as I had the idea, I was behind in planning, is what I now realize. I didn't realize, anyways. And you're asking why did I do it, or how did I come up with the idea? Is that what you're
Yeah, yeah.
asking?
Like what's the motivation behind?
Um, I think that first and foremost, I think like any comedian who produces shows, it's always self-serving, right?
Hmm.
We want to
Generally, yeah.
yeah, we want to perform, right? We want to be create opportunities for ourselves. So I'd say that everything I produce starts there. Of course, at the same time, I want to treat everyone with respect and as much as I can. Obviously, there's different opinions on that. Some people don't, want more money than I can afford, for example. So, that can't always happen. Or other things. But and at one point, I did produce a show called Women of Comedy for about two and a half years, I think it was. So of course, I was not in those shows. So I'm not in all the
Yeah.
shows that I produce, But yeah, I think I was thinking like, how can I kind of figure out a way to elevate the Comedy Nuggets brand? Also, I Comedy Bar Danforth had just recently opened, And I was thinking, now there's SoCap, there's Comedy Bar Danforth.
It's a good little
You know,
strip there. Comedy
yeah.
shows.
There's a
Yeah.
couple other places. I don't know if you know. There's a restaurant called Hirut that does stuff as well.
Oh,
There's the Groove Bar on Danforth as
yeah.
well. Um, so there's probably 4 or 5 places during the course of the year that puts on several shows. Obviously, SoCap and Comedy Bar Danforth are almost exclusively comedy, like 95%.
Yeah.
So I thought it just made a lot of sense where, and also I live in the beaches, and I'm 5 minute drive from Comedy Bar Danforth, and obviously they have the Beaches Jazz Festival here. And then I thought, I don't know, one day I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if there was something like the Beaches Jazz Festival in Toronto? And then I thought,
Yeah.
oh, wait a minute, I live in the East End, I live near there, and Comedy Bar Danforth is there, and then everything sort of like it was like a puzzle, right?
Yeah. I love
Or like
those
Tetris,
moments where you're like,
like it
oh, it's all coming
everything kind of just like
together.
formed. Like I didn't
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
in a way, I didn't come up with the idea. I think the idea presented itself to me.
Yeah, you just saw different elements and then the pieces just kind of connected themselves together. I
And I
tell you
thought
though,
this,
if it's in
yeah,
Greek town, you need Angelo Sarukis to come through there and
yes. Well, Angelos Harukis is not available this
yeah,
year, but I,
yeah,
I
yeah.
did, I
Oh,
did
he's
speak
booked
with,
up. That man's
yeah,
busy.
yeah. Well, he's in Las Vegas. I did speak with his, like with his people there. I think his agent, and we're looking to have him next year.
Mm.
But
You know
yes,
who else would
Angelos.
be a good one is I don't know what his rate would be, but Stavros. Um
Do you mean Manolis?
Stavros.
Oh, Stavros. I don't know
No.
him.
He's a New York City comedian, Greek.
Okay, I
I'm
think
just thinking of Greek comedians.
yeah, yeah. I think I came across it.
Stavros Halakias.
Okay,
Halakias? Some Greek last name. Yeah,
yeah,
he would be probably like a good draw too now because I know that his like podcast is taking off and whatnot. But
yes,
it's phenomenal idea to do it. And it's also like whenever I think whenever I produce comedy shows, I've been doing it. I try to do it with like a charity that my friend kind of works for.
right.
And in that also like go around to the local businesses and see if they want to like make it like a community almost connection. Like
Yeah.
give the businesses that work in the area, like give them 2 tickets if they want to, you know what I mean? Like, because that's how Greek Fest really starts to take over the entire street, is because they're like, oh, this is a gathering of a community. And I
Yeah,
think
well,
you
that's what
can
I'm
do
gonna. I'm
that.
actually going out tomorrow with some posters and going out to businesses and talking with them. I haven't yet
Yeah,
done that.
smart man.
I've been I've been kind of just like really stuck in, like I said, for me, there's like two pieces of the puzzle when you're doing the festival, right? Outside of the obvious, you need the venues and so on, but it's have great comedians, treat them well, and then of course make sure that you can get people to come. So I've been really focused on the comedian side a lot, and for the most part, that's kind of taken care of. So now I'm going to focus on doing the kind of thing you were talking, going out to going out to the
Yeah.
community, speaking to people there in the various businesses, restaurants, etc.
Yeah, that's smart because you can easily get like I remember hearing Jo Koy talk about early days of comedy and he had like rented out this theater, like this big theater, and he was trying to get a certain couple acts, but like he needed, I don't know, it was like $800 or something for it was like maybe 100 seat theater or something like that, very small, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and he's like he needed $800 and he hadn't sold a ticket and he went to like this auto garage and he said, "Hey, I'm Jo Koy. I'm doing this comedy big show at the theater. I've got this act, this act, this act. It's already sold out. I just wanted to see if you wanted to be like a sponsor at the event." And the guy said, "Sure. Like what we'll do is we'll put like 10% off an oil change on the back of every ticket, and I'll
Mhm.
pay you whatever it was, $10 per ticket or whatever to advertise." He sold
Mhm.
advertising space on the back of a ticket to a show where he hadn't sold a single ticket.
That's smart.
So now the guy just handed him, $800, whatever it was for, or $1,000 for all of the seats. And now he gets to sell that ticket with the added benefit of, oh, they can go to this guy's garage and get 10% off an oil change.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I hate and love the business aspect of comedy, but I love like the area where you can make it more of like that community connection.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, let me pass you some customers for helping me out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the idea. That's what I'm going to be I mean, I'm going to be talking to some people maybe about sponsorship, but primarily going out and getting the word out, and like you were saying, meeting with people there and potentially giving them tickets and stuff like that.
Yeah. But you're focused on the comedian aspect side of it. So I want to know, like, what do you broadly you can say, but what do you look for in a performer to be like, that's the person I got to get on my lineup?
I think, well, for me, for the festival, it's kind of like I think there's multiple pieces. I mean, obviously, you need to have like people that will draw, that are like veterans and that have done JFL, and like, so all the headliners have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm bringing some folks in from the US. Well, one Canadian, I'm sure you know Nathan McIntosh.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's coming, and he lives in New York now, but of course he's from Halifax originally. So people like that, like he's been on the Tonight Show and that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Conan, I think too. And
Yeah,
what was the
yeah.
other one? Yeah,
I
he's
think
done
he's in the
all
Late Late
three.
Show. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
he's done
yeah.
three of them.
Crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very crazy. I agree 100%. But great for him. I mean, and he's
Yeah.
hilarious, right?
Oh yeah.
So he has a good following. So it kind of look like it's a kind of a combination of things, right? And it's also like, some people are just kind of out of whack when it comes to being able to afford them, right? Like, of course, like who wouldn't want to have Bill Burr or
Sure. Yeah.
someone at that level, right? But it's also people being available, like Angelo Sarukis, for example, like you were saying, like he's a no-brainer. I mean, it's Greek town. I mean, he's
Yeah.
literally like their Greek god
Yeah,
when it comes to comedy. You know what I mean? He's a comedy god for them
yeah.
because he's hilarious and he's Greek, right? But yeah, it's a combination of that. But also, I look to have diversity in the lineup as well, right? Like diversity in all different ways, and then looking part of that diversity is ethnicity, and part of, like, of course, it's Greek town, so having some Greek folks in there too, but not
Yeah.
but not so but not solely based on like if you're Greek you're in kind of thing. It's not about that,
I would have made it only Greeks.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know what? That in Toronto, you wouldn't be able to do that. There's not that many Greek comedians here in
No,
Toronto.
no, no. It'd be a horrible show. We'd just be doing the same 10 minutes over and over and over.
Well, they don't really, but there's one guy here actually who's literally from Greece. He's like,
Oh,
yeah, and actually he speaks English like just like you and I. I mean, he speaks really
wow.
well. Well, I just said
Amazing.
we speak well. Maybe we don't, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he speaks well. You know what I
English
mean?
is my only language and I barely speak it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, English is my second language, so I think I'm doing pretty good.
Oh, what was your French, I guess, is your first
That's
language
right.
then, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. When did you move from Montreal to Toronto?
I moved in 1995.
1995. Gotcha. And
Mhm.
were you still like sticking with comedy at that point, or had you kind of like veered away from it a bit?
No, what I did is actually when I was in Montreal, I got this idea. I don't even remember how I got it because at the time, of course, there was no internet at that time, or it was just starting. I think 1995 is when it really sort of started to take off. But it was, I mean, I got getting on the internet was a real battle. Like it
Mm,
was fast. The speeds weren't what they are today. You'd click on something, you'd have to wait a minute, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah.
But I moved here. I wanted to take courses at the second city, is what I wanted to do, and so I did that. That's primarily why I moved. And when I did that, I also continued to do stand up at that time until I moved to Australia. My dad's Australian. I went and lived in Australia for a year. I did like the
Oh
backpack.
wow.
I was a
Nice.
backpacker in Australia. Went around Australia, got drunk, and slept on wherever I slept. That kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Wake up
Really
in the morning, you
sad-faced
don't even know
slugging
where
it.
you are. That kind of idea.
That's great, man. So you did
Yeah.
that for a whole year.
I did that for a year. Yep. And I remember it was weird. I left, I arrived back on the exact day that I'd left. And when I got to to the guard or whatever, when you come back into the country there to check your passport and everything, the guy was like, "Oh, you just left?" And I was like, "I think you should check the year."
Yeah, yeah,
The guy
yeah.
was like, yeah, he was thrown by that. I guess you don't meet many people that actually come back on the very day they
Stick to the
left a year
same
later.
date. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Most people were gone for a couple months or whatever, and then they're coming
Well,
back.
in
Yeah.
Australia, you had a lot of people. Like what happened? I don't know what the rules are now. Actually, I believe now you can go for 3 years. At the time I went, you could only go for a year. With Canada
Oh,
to
because
Australia, that was the deal. and you had to have like, I think it was like $3,000 or $5,000 in the bank. You had to show them a bank statement showing that you had, because what they didn't want is that you would go there and then you would be homeless, you'd be
Oh
destitute.
yeah, yeah. You're just
And
trying to be homeless in paradise.
that's right. So some people, what they would do those, they would have their 3 grand, for
Fuck.
example. They would
Yeah.
land in Sydney. They
Blow
would
it
get,
all.
yes, like after like 2 or 3 months, they would be getting hammered every night. They wouldn't be
Oh
working. They'd just be
no.
spending all their money. And then 2 months later, they just have to get on a plane and go back to wherever they came from.
Such a trap.
Yeah. So it was yeah, it's a very expensive place. There's when it comes for backpackers, my God, you can go out any night of the week. There's a bar doing some deal for backpackers every night of the week
Wow,
in
interesting.
almost any city you go in.
I'm gonna bookmark that down.
You should. You should. If you want to go and have a good time and meet people
Yeah.
from all around the world, if you go there, you meet very few Australians if you're a backpacker, because you meet all these other people that are traveling, and
Yeah,
like I live in
yeah. You're
hostels
just
and
talking
stuff
to
the
other
whole time.
backpackers.
That's right.
I had one of my headphones just died, so I'm gonna just ride. I can still hear you though, but I'm like,
Okay.
I'm if I stop responding for a minute and take them out, you'll know that they completely died.
All right.
I'll have to cut in a technical difficulties at that moment, which I
Sure.
don't like doing, but I have it in the background because I had to do it on two other podcasts where someone was talking and the screen just froze. I'm like, oh, it's just the only downfall of doing Zoom podcasts is the internet connection hasn't been
Yeah, yeah.
totally figured out yet.
No problem.
But I mean, still good. I love
Yeah,
that like this technology has advanced further. They got everyone through the pandemic pretty much. Did you do a lot of Zoom comedy
I
through the
did.
pandemic?
I actually did. I think it's interesting. A lot of people were very much like, "Oh, I hate it. It's
I
awful."
poo-pooed it, yeah.
Yeah, all this kind of thing. Whereas my philosophy, it's kind of like with the producing the shows. I think that sometimes when someone does something and if they have any level of success, people equate that to that they love it. Okay.
Mm,
So
yeah.
I'm a comedian first. I wouldn't say I love producing shows. I more so want to like be writing material or performing, etc. But it's a means to an end. I view it as a necessary evil. And the same way with Zoom, right? I kind of viewed it like this is all we've got. And so, yeah, it's not great and it's not live, and all those things are true, but
Yeah.
also this is all we got. Yeah, I kind
Yeah.
of like, it's kind of like when you're having a crappy dinner, you're like, yep, I don't really love this dinner, but is there anything else available? And if the answer is no, then
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat it. I may still not love it, but I'm gonna enjoy it more than not eating at all.
Yeah.
It's kind of
I
how I
remember I
see it.
used to be hungry, and my grandma would say, like, if you're hungry, eat that apple. And I was like, I don't want the apple. And she's like, well, then you're not hungry. I'm like, oh,
Exactly.
this is true, I guess.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why I think there's a different philosophy now with when you're younger, right?
Yeah.
Because people are more um they feel like they have more choice. And in the end, I think during the pandemic there wasn't choice.
Really limited options.
Well, the options was either you do it or you don't. I mean, at one point when we weren't getting out at all, right? Like when we were really literally stuck inside, it was either you do Zoom or nothing, I guess. And
Yeah.
some people chose nothing. I mean, you got to do what you feel good about. If you didn't want to do it, then that makes sense, I guess. But what was great with me during the pandemic, I ended up doing a lot of Zoom shows at night, like at 11 o'clock our time, and it'd be 8 o'clock in LA. And then I met a bunch of people in LA. And then after the pandemic in 2022, I went to LA and I did 15 shows in 12 days
Wow.
through the majority of those
Because you met
connections.
all these people. Yeah.
So
And that's the
it
thing
turned out
that
great
people
that way.
forget about, like, is you're still on a thing with other comics. Like, there's still going to be funny, just in a different way, right? Like, I guess I took it literally as like, oh, we're doing stand up to everybody else, and I didn't even like bother looking into it.
Yeah, well, I think for me, what I always find interesting, I think that why maybe I was more okay with it because a lot of stand-ups get a real issue when there's no microphone, for example, or the mic goes
Mm,
dead, or these kind of scenarios, right? Whereas I did a lot of improv, and in improv, you never use a mic, and sometimes you'll turn to the audience and tell a story, or even whatever, right? In improv, people will host shows without a mic. And in those same rooms, after the improv show, there'll be a stand-up show and everyone must use a mic, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's kind of like, I think we just proved that you don't need a mic in this room, you know? But whatever. But my point is that when I was doing on Zoom, of course, I wasn't holding a mic and doing that kind of thing. And I think for a lot of people, they associate doing stand-up, you have to have a microphone, you
Mm-hmm.
have to be,
It's your tool.
yeah, you should be standing, you should be on the stage. I mean, outside of the fact that yes, you shouldn't be staring at a camera. Like, I mean, there's a whole bunch of elements which makes it so like, how can I think I'm doing stand up when I'm in my basement in this room with my dad's degrees behind me? I
Mm.
don't have a mic. There's no people, all this stuff, right? And for
Yeah.
me, I kind of just thought, oh well, I don't know. Like it just is whatever it is, and I just did it kind of thing. Not really
It
thinking too
worked
much
out,
about it.
man. I
Well, it kind
pivoted
of
to
worked out that way.
music. I was like, I just started making music,
Oh,
and then I
cool.
ended up producing an album in like 2 years.
Nice.
And now I've switched back to doing stand up, being in the city, and
Yeah.
podcasting. Of course, it's become my new obsession. Making sure that I get this out every single week.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
nice.
there's a question that I always ask my guests, and is if you could get on a phone call with
Mm-hmm.
15-year-old Luke
Mm-hmm.
and give him a piece of advice based on what you know now, also knowing that it won't affect your current timeline. So you can't tell him about lottery ticket numbers or any of
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Just pure advice to a 15-year-old looking for it. What do you say?
Jesus, what would I say? That's a great question. I'm not big on giving advice to people.
How about to yourself?
Because I don't because I what's that?
How about to yourself?
Oh my goodness. I don't I generally think my advice is not worth giving. So you know what I mean?
No,
I think so many people are smart and that they can come up with a better idea than mine probably.
no,
Um,
but it's to yourself. That's what's important about it, right?
No, I know, but I'm saying, but I'm such in that mindset that I don't give advice that I don't even think in those terms. Let me think.
Yeah,
What would
I
I say?
see what you're saying. I see what you're
What
saying.
would I say? Well, this is actually one thing I would say. Um, I would say, make sure that you brush your gums when you're brushing your teeth because I got braces later in life. And I had an overbite. You probably don't know
Mm.
this. About 8 years ago, well, I've had an overbite my whole life, and my top jaw was too narrow. So I had basically what they did is that they put braces on. They expanded. They did an operation to loosen my top jaw. They put a palate expander. They call it expanded my
Yeah,
jaw.
I've had that.
Did you have the palate expander?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When I
Oh,
was
okay.
like in high school, yeah.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have had the operation though, right?
No, there was no operation. It
Yeah,
was just like they put this first, they put spacers in to space
yeah.
out my molars, and then a palate expander appeared to
Sure.
like
When you're
widen the
younger,
gap.
it's not actually like it's cartilage still.
Mm.
And when you get older, it sets. And so anyway, so they had to do an operation. They did a palate expander, but they also had to did they break your jaw? Did they do that part?
No, I didn't break my jaw.
Okay, so I had an operation where they
I could
broke
have
my
freaked
jaw
out.
and they pushed my jaw forward
Wow, that's crazy.
so that it can fit. You know when you go to a dentist, you see those two like the teeth on top of each other?
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
trying to create that scenario, you know?
yeah.
So I had kind of two problems. The teeth, my bottom teeth were too far back,
So
and
they had to
also
just slide it
it
all
was
forwards.
yeah. So they did
Damn.
that, and then what I really realized is too is that I after all this when I went to the dentist, they were talking to me, and I whenever they tell you to brush your teeth, I feel like they don't tell you that you need to be brushing your gums.
Hmm.
Like that was never obvious to me. I thought literally brush the teeth.
Yeah, just the teeth.
Yes, but you should be brushing the gums.
God
It's so
damn.
important to brush up there at the gums. You know what I mean?
I feel like
Keeps
my
your gums
electric
nice and
toothbrush
healthy.
is gonna just tear my gums to shreds.
Yeah. But it's good to brush at the top, but you don't. So that's what I would tell myself because I think listen, I think that in our society today, the only thing that's super acceptable to be really vain about is teeth.
Hmm.
Because everything
Ah,
else, if you go around and you do things, people are kind of like, oh, you got a nose job or you did this, and people are kind of
sure.
judgy about you, even though you might feel good about it. But if you get braces and you get veneers and etc., everyone's like, those are amazing teeth. No one ever judges you to be like, you're some vain asshole. No one ever says
Yeah,
that.
no. They're
So
like
everyone's fine
great
with it.
teeth. Yeah,
And
yeah.
teeth are great because when people talk to you, they are looking at your eyes or your mouth.
Hmm.
So
So
ultimately, your teeth.
yeah, your teeth are the front desk to your face, right?
That's right. I look at some people sometimes and I feel like, wow, like that person feels like they would do better if they had better teeth. And again, not because I'm judging it, because I think just that as the world kind of like subconsciously judges that.
Yeah, sure. I just want better teeth because it's tough chewing things.
Well,
If you have
that's
crappy teeth,
yes,
you
that's also
can't
important.
bite through a steak. Like,
Well, I'll say that one thing. So my whole thing, part of it was covered by the government because it's actually
nice.
it's a functional issue,
Mm,
and I wouldn't sleep properly. And now that my teeth fit like that, oh my god, sleeping
pain
was
in the
way
day,
better.
probably.
And like you're saying, chewing things and eating became much more like effective and less of a problem, you know?
It
So
also is what like your back molars are so important because that chewing and those muscles help strengthen your jawline. Just
exactly,
or eating over time, right? And the less you're using those, the kind of rounder that area can get because it's just like it's not being used, so it's just skin, right? It just sits there.
exactly.
But if it's constantly being this is the dentist podcast now.
That's right. It's turned into a dentist podcast.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. I gotta get what is it? Oral B? I got Oral B sponsor.
Yeah. I was thinking earlier when I was thinking like a kind of like advice, I was thinking something more philosophical, you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, what would be your philosophical advice? I mean, that was functional advice.
Oh, philosophical again. I don't think I would have any philosophical advice for
Follow your
anyone.
dreams. Like
Like nah, I
don't
don't.
drink so much in Australia.
No, I would never say that. I had an amazing
You're like,
time in
same
Australia.
amount. Do it again.
I would
Run
never
it
say
back.
that. I would never say that. I would say no, I don't think I'd have any sort of philosophical advice. Like because like you said,
Hey, that's good too. Like some people think that they need to give. I like when I get different answers because it makes me think about the question differently. Like, I think if you don't really have advice to give to yourself, that's a way of saying that you don't really have any regrets. Like most people give advice because
oh,
they feel like they messed up at some point in their life and they want someone else to avoid those mistakes.
well,
I
I
feel
would
like that's where
yeah.
most advice comes from.
Right, but I wouldn't say it's interesting. I guess I don't think of life as far as regrets. I mean, would I have wanted like so? You know, when we talked about when I started comedy and everything, I stopped doing
Mm,
stand up for 19 years, and would I have wished on some level that I didn't do that? Yes. Like getting back into stand up after that long was one of the toughest things I've ever done. You know,
sure.
it was so difficult for so many reasons, and it continues to be like that for all kinds of reasons. Okay. Um, but um, but at the same time, I it's not like I regretted what I did. I
During that
didn't,
time.
yeah, I don't look back at it
Yeah.
and think like, geez, you know what? Like my life would have been better if I think maybe it would have been, maybe it would have been like, how can I know, right? And but
Hmm.
it wasn't as if I did something that was so brutal, like I don't know, that I did something like I killed a man. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like I think if I killed a man, I would be very regrettable. Like I
Yeah.
mean, I would
Yeah.
regret
Yeah.
something like that,
You'd be
you
like,
know? But
fuck. Why would I
I
do
didn't do
that?
something like that. So although on some
Unless you
level,
wanted him dead, then that's a core memory.
well, yeah, I mean, listen, well, yeah, I think we all want someone dead, maybe in a
Hey,
fleeting
I don't
moment,
know.
but
I don't know.
you know, we've all driven a
Yeah.
car, so I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there's a moment where you want that guy in front of you
Be
dead.
behind the wheel of rush hour traffic and tell me you don't want someone dead.
Yeah, yeah, of course. There's that. But what I'm saying is, yeah, so yeah, I think for that reason, because I don't think, for example, that I've lived any perfect life or whatever, or something like that, or that
Hmm.
I could have made better choices, you know what I mean? Like when my mother died, it screwed me up for years, right? But
Mm.
could I give myself advice to hand I because the reason I'm saying that is because I actually don't know how I should have handled it differently. I just know that maybe I should have done it differently, but I'm not the guy to give me advice on
Geez,
like
your
how
hindsight's
would it have been
2020.
better? How could I have done better? I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm sure I could have
No,
done way better.
we all could. I think
Yeah,
that's all this life
but
is we just we end this one and we wake up in a different reality where they spell Kit Kat with two T's. And then
yeah.
you're just picking up the same, from a different point at the same life. And you kind of have deja vu in moments and you're kind of like have these weird gut instincts to do one thing over another thing. It's life is weird in and of itself. So I think moment to moment to ever be like hard on yourself for I could have done this, I could have done that is, almost a waste of the present.
Well, that's one thing I learned along the way, right? I mean, my philosophy in a way is I do as much as I can, the best I can, and then I go to bed.
Yeah, that's
And
a great philosophy to have.
and
Yeah.
I hope that along the way I'm trying to treat people as good as they would want, and at the same time, like, be nice to myself.
Yeah.
Hopefully that doesn't piss off too many people. You know what I mean?
It
I'm sure I'm
sounds like a
pissing off
t-shirt.
someone, but I don't even realize I'm doing it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We all that's the thing about the internet is like somewhere someone doesn't like your opinion on something.
Oh,
We just
oh,
gotta
but I
deal with
but I
that.
don't even just think it's internet. I think it's just,
Yeah.
like you're going around like, look, what pisses me off, like talking about driving. Sometimes you're driving the car and you're in a line there waiting for the light or whatever, and there's a side
Yeah.
street comes up, and then a guy in front of you decides he's gonna let like 12 cars go in, you know what I mean?
Oh my God,
Like,
yeah.
that's cool. Like, let in 4 cars.
One. My limit is let one
Yeah.
guy or
But
gal
when
in
he's like at
and
6,
then
I'm like,
it's
Jesus, you're
closed.
being nice to that guy. What about me? I'm
Yeah.
directly
Pass
behind
it on
you.
to the next person. Let them decide if they want to wait for someone. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So that kind of guy, like that guy there, you see, to me, that guy there is the perfect example of someone that's going through life thinking he's being nice, and yet other people behind him are just hating on him. So in his
Yes.
mind,
Yeah,
he's like,
yeah.
I'm being not, how can people hate me? I'm being nice. But you're like,
Yeah.
well, because it's this dynamic. That's why we hate you, because you're not being nice to me. You're being nice
You're
to all
being
these other
nice and an
people.
asshole at the same time.
I know. And I think that we all have the power to do that without knowing.
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
think
Yeah.
and I try to minimize that as much as I can, although I know it's happening. Of course, I have no control over that, because it's the perception of other people of what I'm doing or not doing. And that's a kind of a crappy thing about life, but I do my best not to do that.
Hmm. Luke, I want to shout out your Instagram so people watching on here can go follow you. And if you're listening, it's at Luke Lynndale. Link is in the description.
Yeah.
And go to lukelindale.com/shows for all the upcoming shows. Is there anything else that you wanted to shout out?
Well, I've started a podcast with Lenny Corrado and Angela Majorana Thurston. It's called It Hurts When I Laugh.
That's this one here, right?
Yep. Yeah,
There
and
you
we
go.
we haven't we haven't actually released anything yet, but probably after the festival, probably in September, we're looking at putting stuff live. We've recorded 6 episodes so far.
Smart.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
behind the scenes
Just
with
bank a
comedians.
bunch.
Yeah, exactly. We want to bank a bunch, and in the process, the first time we do this, like understanding how you edit them and etc. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure.
There's a
Well, you
million AI programs now, dude. I could send you some that'll blow
sure,
your mind.
sure, yeah, yeah, do that.
Yeah, yeah, because
Yeah,
it's just like it's become easier. It already was like easy in this way that like you could go to Best Buy and buy like a podcasting kit now or off
yeah,
Amazon or whatever. They have like a whole setup that'll come in a box. And now in terms of like Spotify, they've set up a whole new like podcaster section to their platform, and they'll post your podcast on Google, on Apple, on everything, and you can have video on Spotify. It's like it's become easier and easier to like access all these means of distribution. And then even when it comes to editing with AI coming in now, like there's a site called Opus Pro where you
I
can
know it.
just put the link
I've
in and
tried
it
that
just,
one.
dude, it's crazy, right?
I've actually done that one, Opus Pro.
Yeah, it's
But if you
great.
know other ones, is that the best one, you think?
That one's good for finding like viral clips or whatever
Yeah,
within a podcast and help you crank out those shorts quickly. I find like Veed.io has also
yeah.
been a good one as well.
Does it do
Um,
AI now?
In terms of generative like subtitling, for
Right.
sure.
Got it.
But like you'd have to clip down moments or whatever. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I would say just make it like when it comes to editing the whole podcast, make it super simple. Especially when it comes to like YouTube. People, I've realized I've taken out my whole intro and everything. The podcast just kind of previews and then starts because like people on YouTube, I can see like where the drop off is.
Yeah.
Like you can see like, oh, a video intro like loses people's attention. They click off because
Oh,
they're like, I
yeah.
don't want to. That gives them a moment to think, do I want to watch this? And they go, no, and they click out.
Well, yeah, my whole philosophy, so I don't know if you know that I worked in digital product management for years. And the philosophy was this, right? Like for a website or anything like that, is that when the person is clicking on something, if they have a moment to think, then things are too slow.
Yeah,
That's the
that's crazy.
barometer of, like, they're like, how's my website? Is my website too slow? Well, I clicked on something and then I had a chance to think about something else.
Yeah,
And so if I can think like it, you're clicking on the link and you're like, I don't know, like, oh, I want to go to the section to see how, like, the shows on, like, let's say you're on Comedy Bar, you're like, oh, well, let me see the shows, right? And when
yeah,
you click on it, if you have a chance to think like, um, maybe I should get something to eat, like if you have a chance to think that or anything
yeah.
before the page comes up, that website's too slow. And
Oh
it's the same
man,
thing with YouTube or whatever, right? If the person has a
yeah,
chance, and the thing is, yeah, when you have this intro, then people have a chance to be like, oh, you know what? Actually, I need to call my friend or
yeah. It
whatever.
could be anything. Yeah, yeah,
And while
literally.
they have that thought, they're gone because they now they do that. They want to do that thing.
Yes,
And it,
yes,
and it
yeah.
has nothing to do with like that they don't care about your podcast or whatever.
Sure.
They still may be interested, but they're still gone.
They're just distracted humans. It's like we
Yeah,
have the
they're
minds
just,
of goldfish.
well, it's also, yeah, I think, well, that's what people say now, but I think it's more the fact that we're thinking, right? We're just
Yes,
alive,
yeah.
and if you're alive, you're thinking.
We're
And so if
thinking, and there's so many things to do, right?
well, yeah, I mean, simplistically, you want to call your friends, you want to go have, like, go have lunch or whatever, or just like simple things like that, right? And then
Yeah.
yeah, and then sometimes if you're watching that and you're like, oh yeah, I'm on YouTube. Oh yeah, this other person has a podcast. And then you're just like, you're also competing with that too. And so I
Yeah,
agree
you're
with you.
going rabbit holes.
I find that I want to start doing a lot of TikTok stuff. And believe it or not, this is the first thing I'm thinking about right now. My biggest, my first hurdle, as far as like the videos themselves, is how does it start?
Hmm.
What is the first thing that is said? And like they call that the hook, right? But
Yeah.
does it does it start like in on a word, like in the middle of a word? Is that how they started? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Typically, like I feel like TikTok is basically like one big Tim Robinson like sketch. Like, is that his name? Tim Robinson, the
You
guy
like
who,
him?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you should leave. I like that if you view this sketch comedy like objectively of just like for what it is,
Yeah,
they don't have a beginning or an ending. There's
yeah,
just always a moment in the plot where Tim pulls up or a strange character pulls up, right? And just kind of throws the whole situation sideways. And they usually don't resolve it. It just like ends at that point. And to me, I'm like, oh, that's beautiful because my problem was I never finished and wrote a sketch because I'm like, I'd have these ideas, but I'm like, I don't know how to end it. So why
yeah,
would I do
exactly.
it if I don't know how to end it? And Tim just was like, fuck ending it. I'll just do the funniest parts of it and then just on
Yeah.
to the next thing, you know?
Well, have you ever heard? I just looked it up. Have you ever heard a term? It's a Latin term, and it has to do with plays and things like that. It's called the term is in media res, and what it means is it means start in the middle.
Mm,
And I think that the challenge that we have as people, we think that the beginning is interesting because it's interesting to us
yes.
because
Yeah.
we were
Yeah.
at the beginning, and we think like, oh, if I started from the beginning. But the problem a lot of times is that the beginning is slow
Mm,
and there's a lot of exposition, and then we don't care, right? That's why I feel like when you look at something like Law and Order, like they start in the middle and then they go back to the beginning, right? Like
sure. To show
they
you how you
start
got to
like,
that point.
yeah, the guy's dead.
Yeah.
And then you're like, how did he die in Central Park? Why does he have
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
apple in his mouth? And whatever, like
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever's happening. And so you're like, the important thing happened, and then they work backwards. They're like, then it's interesting to go back to the beginning because you're like, well, how did it? how did it kind of build up to this moment, right?
Yeah.
And I think, like, by the way, Tim Robinson, in 2011, when I started back doing improv in 2010. In 2011, I went to Chicago twice. I did a week at the IO and a week at the Annoyance. I don't know if you know those places in
Yeah, I know
Chicago
that
for.
I think the IO closed now, like during.
Well, it closed during the pandemic, and I believe someone bought it and
Oh,
reopened it recently.
nice. Okay.
Yeah. So Shauna Halpern is no longer involved in it, but anyways, I when I was there, I don't know if you knew this. A lot of people, like in Canada, we don't really know this, but what they do for Saturday Night Live, they do auditions in LA and Chicago. I think in New York maybe as well, but at least those two places. And one of the audition spots was at the IO.
Oh,
And
wow.
Tim Robinson, what they do is they do characters, and I went to watch the audition
Oh,
in
that's awesome.
2011,
You can go
and,
watch it.
and Tim Robinson was in it.
That makes sense
Was
that
one
he
of
would
the
have been trying to audition for a show like that. It's cool to see that he can kind of do his own thing, with Netflix. That's I
Yeah,
love when a
yeah. Well, he
comedian
was in a
can kind
sketch
of
group
take
with
control
another
like that.
guy. He was in a sketch group with another guy. Hilarious, a duo. They were so hilarious. I
Wow.
don't know what the other guy's doing now, but Tim Robinson he's taken off
Yeah, yeah. Everybody should go
because he was a
watch. I think
writer
you
at
should leave.
first.
Makes sense
Yeah,
too, like that he would just, want to be acting it out as well, right? Like if he's writing, a lot of people do the writing thing to help, pay the bills, maybe. And then
yeah.
it's like
Well, I
now
think
you
a lot
can
of those
finally.
writers, but a lot of those writers that come from IO or the Groundlings and things like that, they are performers. It just doesn't work out for them
Oh, I see.
to be performers, right?
Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to shout out at the end here? I mean, we want people to go check out your festival. Can they get all the details for that at your website?
Yeah, yeah. Danforth Comedy Festival or comedynuggets.com
Okay.
leads to the same place, to the show page. Um, yeah, I think that's about it. The weekends are August 4th to 6th and 11th to 12th. That first weekend is that long weekend in August. And actually, Caravana is occurring that week. And
Nice.
then the following week is Taste of the Danforth. So we're not in cooperation with them at the moment, but potentially that could happen.
Yeah, that's what I would be going for too.
Yeah, yeah.
Just try
I
to
mean,
partner with them and make it the comedy branch of that festival. That's a good move as well.
yeah, yeah. I mean
Yeah.
that could happen, right? I mean, so yeah, I'm excited. We've got a lot of amazing acts in it. Just excited in general. Right now, I'm really drowning and overloaded in preparation, but I'm trying to, like I said before, I do as much as I can during the day and night, and then I go to bed.
It'll pay off, man. I'm
Yeah,
sure
I'm just
the
hoping I get
reward
everything
will be
done.
worth it. Yeah, you got this. You got this. You can
Yeah,
do this.
yeah.
Thanks for making the time though. I mean, like
Well,
obviously
thank
you're
you.
you're pressed, but I'm
No,
happy
no,
that
no,
I
no.
could.
This is important. Getting the word
This is
out.
promo. Technically, this is work. You could write this off.
That's right. That's right. No, this is. I'm appreciative that you're making the time. I just reached
Yeah,
out to you a couple days ago, and I'm already on it. It's awesome.
gotcha. And that's how she works. Everybody watching, if you want these episodes ad free before anyone else, you got to go to patreon.com/the Johnny Rogers. It's the only way to get it. Luke, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah,
Until
thank
next
you.
time, everybody, stay classy. You've been listening to The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.